Welcome, everyone. We have an amazing show today. We have a globally recognized thought leader in the digital world. His name is Sulemaan Ahmed, and we are so excited to have him here. He is called the CEO Tech Whisperer, and he indeed coaches CEOs of global organizations all over the world about how to manage their digital media in order to improve business results. He has been an expert for Young Presidents Organization, Entrepreneurs Organization, Exceptional Women on Boards, Extraordinary Women on Boards, and Exceptional Women Awardees, which is our organization. And so we're so excited to have him here today. You're going to learn a lot. I learn so much every time I hear him speak. I'm Lorraine Siegel. I'm the founder, chair, and CEO of the Exceptional Women Awardees Foundation. Our mission is to enable high-level, high-potential women leaders to rise to meet their dreams. Why did I start this foundation? Well, I never had a mentor. All the way through my early career as a lawyer and then as CEO of multiple companies, I never had a guide. Even as a board director, there was no one there to help guide me on my way. And so I want to be sure that women who walk the road less traveled, like I have, will always have a group of women leaders around them to enable them to reach their highest level of success possible. That's exactly what we do at EWA. And then we are also so fortunate to bring in thought leaders from outside our organization who educate us and inspire us even more than that. And that's exactly what Sulemaan Ahmed does. So welcome to Sulemaan.
Hi, Lorraine. Thanks for having me on your show today.
I'm so glad that you're with us, and I can't wait to get started. So first of all, for all our listeners, and I'm also happy to hear it again, tell us what your company does.
Our firm, Servolanix, which is myself, my wife who co-founded with me, and some of our team, we're educators. So we're teachers who work with senior executives, board members, and leaders like yourself, where we teach them about digital, social media, the platforms, but how to leverage them. So it's not so much about putting a post up to go viral, but the actual mechanism and strategy behind the platforms, because our view is that attitude reflects leadership. So if leaders like yourself understand these platforms and they know better how to use them and leverage them, whether it's for recruitment, sales, you name it, any initiatives that are needed to push a business forward.
So, I mean, this is really fundamental to every business in the world today. How did you get into this?
Well, my background, I'd like to say I'm smart, and I knew about this when I was 9 when we were talking the other day, but I'm really not that smart. I came across it from a background in digital and e-commerce. And a few years ago, one of our clients, a leader, she told me she was boxed in. And I asked her, I said, what do you mean you're boxed in? And she said, when we were talking about digital and social media, and she said, I don't know. My team know I don't know. I know they know I don't know. You can't go to the board and say I don't know. And I can't go to the agencies and vendors and say I don't know. So what do I do? How do I learn this stuff? And so that showed to us that there was a real gap, and her needs are different at a senior leadership level. She's not so much going to be executing, but she needs to understand and know the questions to ask for these platforms. So we view that as an opportunity with a unique segment in the marketplace, and that's where we focused our efforts for the last decade.
So, what differentiates you? I mean, there are a lot of people out there that are apparently doing this, ad agencies and branding organizations. What differentiates you from others?
I would say that for us, our approach is strictly as educators. We're not trying to upsell or cross-sell other products or services. Our goal is strictly to teach the leaders how to use these platforms, but for measurable outcomes. So we are not consultants. We're educators. Our engagements are for a set period of time where we get people on their way, and then they can do it, or then they can work with other people to do it. I think also our background in digital and e-commerce over a few decades, plus our experience in various advocacy work. It's one thing, I think, to be able to talk the talk, but can you actually walk the walk and show how to do these things that have an output and an outcome? And then I think the most important thing is trust. Our firm's a little bit unique. We only take clients, Lorraine, on referral of clients. So we don't do RFPs or those kind of things. We only take clients who are referred by clients because discretion is a big part of the work that our firm does.
Well, Toronto is one of my favorite cities in the world. We lived there and our son was born there. So I have a very soft feeling for Toronto. And coming from Toronto, where there is a lot of technology development, how did you move into the US market? Because that's not necessarily in something that is that easy to do. Let's put it that way.
It's a good point. For us, it was actually our clients referred us to their U.S. counterparts, and then The other thing was we had champions within YPO. So people like Alan McLaren, Rick Dua, Scott Murdell, and others referred us to many of the other CEOs that they knew. And then another key person who you know is Lisa Shallett, who is a member of our firm's advisory board and the leader of Extraordinary Women on Boards, where she kindly introduced me to you. So they've, and others like Linda Descano's on our firm's board, they've been our advocates, have introduced us. So that's what allowed us to spread in the US market and overseas now.
That's fabulous. And Extraordinary Women on Boards and Lisa, a good friend of ours too, and our organizations have a wonderful collaborative relationship together. So let's get to the nitty gritty. Sulemaan,
Okay.
give us an example of a challenge that you were brought in to resolve, and how did you resolve it?
Well, most recently, I think the example was with COVID. A lot of us are, things are clearing up, but when COVID hit, a lot of CEOs or executives didn't really invest or make digital a priority for them. But the ways that, as you as a leader may have done in the past in your career, where management by walking around, you can't do that anymore because people are working remotely. There's limitations on staff. There's limitations on travel and quarantines and those kind of things. So a lot of people suddenly panicked and reached out and said, what do I do? And so it was interesting to see some of our clients had said that what they'd done before prepared them for this moment to be able to continue to lead. Now, obviously, face-to-face is better. I would love to present to you and your audience in person, but we have to pivot. And how do you do that digitally, and how do you manage digitally? So that's been a big priority for a lot of leaders and board members, is how to understand these platforms. So for example, let's say you run a packaged goods company. The moment to learn about Twitter is not when you're suddenly a crisis and it's online. That's not the time to learn it. The time to learn it and understand what it is before that happens. That's our point.
Oh, very interesting. So to the audience, this is your opportunity. You heard what Sulemaan said. They only take clients by referral. So if you have a question and you want to put it up, we will get it answered by Sulemaan here and now. So this is a golden opportunity, may never happen again. So make sure to put your questions in. We'd love to answer them live. So Sulemaan, I used to be on a public telecommunications company board for a number of years, also a commercial bank. And we had cyber threats every single day. In fact, in the telecom area, we called it phantom traffic, and then some. So these are very critical issues. Can you give us some techniques of how you managed through those?
Well, one of them that I can provide to all your audience members, whether they're a CEO like yourself or a board member, or they're a manager, it's a simple one, is to ensure that everyone has enabled two-factor authentication, 2FA, on all their social media platforms. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. And the reason for that is we had a client of ours recently who was very prominent, and his Instagram account got hacked. And he didn't have a way to contact anyone at Instagram. Now, we happen to have relationships with people at the major platforms, so we could escalate it. But it was a lot of heartache for him because, then suddenly his account's spreading porn to people in direct messages or telling them to buy Bitcoin. And we managed to recover his account within about 24 to 36 hours, which was pretty quick. But others, he would have avoided that problem if he had enabled two-factor authentication. So for those who don't know what that means, let's say that I know Lorraine Siegel's email address and her password because I figured it out, or I bought it on the dark web. Then if I try to log into Lorraine's LinkedIn account, if I have that information, I could do it. But if Lorraine takes just 1 minute, goes into her settings section of LinkedIn and enables two-factor authentication, what that means then is even if someone from a new device has her email and her password, they need to get a code that's sent to Lorraine's mobile to confirm to whitelist that computer. This only takes a couple of minutes, but it surprises me how many people don't do it. And I think it's really important for everyone to do that. That's one quick step that I would recommend for everyone to do.
Well, I think you've changed lives every time you talk about that. And you certainly changed mine, because when I first heard you say that, eventually everybody in our team realized that we were going to go onto two-factor authentication. And of course, it drove everybody nuts initially. I was getting
sorry to your team for that. I gave quite a bit of work for them.
But now, we're secure because the people who are on the team already have authenticated, and things are moving forward. So yes, it's a minor inconvenience, but a major avoidance of challenges down the road. So to our audience, I can't advise you more strongly to go do that. It's really It's simple to do, and it's so important. So let's talk a little bit about ransomware, because that is a very fearful situation for any company, and many companies are actually paying ransom. Can you address that?
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's prominent, and it's happening more and more. And it's not just some hacker in mom's basement who's doing it. You have organized crime, you have nation states that are doing it, where they're making millions and millions of dollars. And so, particularly if you're in a senior leadership position on a board, or considered or defined as high net worth or ultra high net worth, then there's the likelihood you're going to be targeted. So where you have phishing attacks where someone just sends out a mass email, they now have something called whaling, and that's where you're actually targeting individuals to try and hack into their systems, personal or business. So with ransomware, the key things are not to click on links or texts from anyone. And even if it's a known person, like even if Lorraine sent me a text and I know that that's Lorraine's number, I might call her first to say, did you send me that text or that email? Because what happens is one person gets affected, another person does. And one of our clients, this happened a couple of years ago, they received an email from someone that was a friend, and they clicked on DocuSign documents, or what appeared to be that. And then these folks hacked into their system, but they didn't target it right away. They actually used it in a different way. Ransomware, what Lorraine's describing, is more immediate. They lock down your computer and they're like, pay us 10 Bitcoin or you're going to lose everything. What these folks did was they monitored the email traffic, and they saw that the client was using a lot of money transfers, and they actually created a fake email to the controller, and they basically took $1.5 million by the time they figured out what was going on.
Wow, that's scary. That really is scary. Now, there is insurance you can buy for this, is there? Or am I incorrect on that?
Well, you're absolutely correct. I would recommend anyone that's got a business, small, medium, large, to make sure that your insurance company provides cybersecurity insurance. But to me, it's almost like an ounce of prevention, like the inconvenience we talked about. Two-factor authentication is worth more than the pound of cure. So one of the things that I know a firm that we've worked with, for disclosure, Cyberbox, they actually provide cybersecurity insurance. But what they also do is do an analysis on the front end to make sure there's no gaps for you. And if you do have ransomware, you or I don't want to negotiate with someone, out there who's claiming ransomware. They actually have a SWAT team that comes in and negotiates with the hijackers, if you will, for lack of a better term, or cyber criminals, to negotiate terms to ensure a secure transfer of the funds. And so that's all provided in there. And we actually are clients of Cyberbox as well. We have it for our firm. Because it's for me, it's worth the premium. And I would recommend anyone use that product or a similar offering for themselves or their organizations.
Yeah, that is absolutely critical. And I'm glad that you suggested it, and we'll certainly make note of it. So a whole new industry has been created around dealing with these kinds of criminals. Unbelievable. We have a couple of questions, so I want to put up the first one, and let's see what our audience has to say. Well, this is a hometown, well, almost hometown, at Vancouver on the west coast of Canada. Daniel, thank you. Can you give an example of a CEO whom you helped, and no need for names?
Thanks for the question, Daniel. One example would be for a CEO we've worked with. They had never really bothered with their online reputation. And so what I mean by that for your audience is do something simple. Google yourself, type your name into a search engine and see what comes up. For this CEO, who's actually from out west, they didn't really have much online. They had no presence on social media, and that was fine. But then there was a critical article that was published about them, and that was the first thing that showed up in search results. And they didn't like it, and they couldn't get the newspaper to take down the article. So the question then was, well, what can you do? So in that case, they realized that they wanted to own the search results from a reputation management perspective. And so if we look at it within Canada, the United States, Google's research shows that 94% of people don't go past page 1 of search results. Think about your own behavior. Like usually you don't go to page 2, 3, 4, 5, or 10 if you're looking on that first page. And in a mobile world, most people don't go past the first screen, the first 3 results. So in that case, we work with the executive to build up enough things so that what they owned or controlled showed up first. And that was a really big issue, because now if someone writes a hit piece or a blog or a questionable article, if you don't control what shows up on that first page of results, someone's going to control it for you.
It's pretty scary to be a public figure nowadays, or to be a person who's not yet a public figure but is still running an organization where people can target you. So what can, besides the two-factor authentication, managing your public persona is a real job. How do you recommend people who don't necessarily have access to your services can help themselves this way?
Well, I would say that there's a couple of things. I mean, if your audience members right now, if they tried an ego search where they type their name into a search engine, often they'll see that things that show up, like your LinkedIn account, your Twitter account, it could be YouTube, it could be where you're in the press or other things. Own the things that you control. I mean, years ago, I don't know if you remember the lady called the Octomom. She was a woman that had like 14 kids, and she was an exotic dancer, shall we say.
Yes.
The problem was when you typed my name in, she showed up because her last name was spelled like my first name. So that's not the thing that I necessarily want people to see. So I was in that situation where I decided, well, I have to control that. So that's when I looked at things like LinkedIn and Twitter, our own website. I took time to invest in to improve those things. So now when you Google me, that's what shows up as opposed to that person.
Wow. Yeah, most people don't Google themselves. So I think that's probably step number one, is to Google yourself and see what you can find.
And if I could add, Lorraine, not just yourself, like even I would say for your husband, for your wife, for your kids, like take a look. Even the challenge is, and I've got kids, our youth today are facing a different situation than we did because everything's online. And so when time comes for them to apply to college or for a first job, they don't realize what they put on TikTok or Snapchat is easily accessible. And the other day I spoke to a head of HR for a large organization, a financial institution, and he told me they don't even do reference checks now. They don't ask a candidate for references. They will go on and look on social media to see what they need to find. And if the hiring manager wants to, sees who the mutual connections are, for example, on LinkedIn, and ask those people about the candidate, because their view is the person's going to provide 3 references. They're going to say they're great anyways.
Wow. That's scary. I mean, as a parent, you now have the added responsibility of educating your children on social media, which we all hoped we would do. Yeah. But what do you know what they're doing when they're not at home and they're out with friends and so on? So very, very scary stuff, but important to know that you can get ahead of it, which is great. There's another couple questions I want to honor our audience, and let's bring up the next one, which is from Chicago. Jennifer, thank you. How has the pandemic affected the advice you give to CEOs?
Thanks for the question, Jennifer. I think our counsel's the same, but the thing that I would say that's one thing that's changed the advice to CEOs is we try to advise them to be a little more understanding or patient with people. My view, personal opinion, that I find that online people are a bit harsh sometimes in responses or reactions. There's no room for nuance. So I'll give you an example. This was one executive CEO we were working with, and one of the things I suggested to them was I said, look, I think you might want to go in and recognize some of your employees, because you can't do it in person by management of walking around, because the entire team was spread. Thousands of them were working remotely. And I said, what I want you to do is actually go on LinkedIn and take a look at 2 or 3 employees who are 4 or 5 pay grades below you. They're not your direct reports. They're not, directly in contact with you. And take a look at what they're writing online, for example. And if they write something that's good, where they have an accomplishment, where they finished, a CFA designation, or they helped a charity, or they're sharing an article that talks about culture or the kind of positive values you want to associate with your organization, comment on it, like it. And so his response to me, Lorraine, was, this is stupid. Like, nobody cares what the hell I write on social media. And I said, you're probably right, but humor me. So he did. And I said, and then once you've done that, I showed him how. We found 3 employees that he wasn't connected to. They weren't first or second degree connections. They were like third. And he went and made some nice comments and thoughtful himself. And then I said, the next thing you might want to do is tell your divisional heads or the regional heads that you've done this, because, suddenly the CEO's commenting on people on LinkedIn. Some people might freak out, and, they don't know if it's good or bad. So just give them a heads up that you're doing this. It's a positive thing. You just want to reinforce things with the employees and let them know they're doing a good job. where you feel that what they've shared or written is appropriate. So he said, okay. And then the next day I got a text from him, and the text was, "You a-hole." So I was like, what happened? And he said, well, I did what you said. I messaged all the employees, like you said. I said, yeah. And he said, and then I emailed their regional heads and told them I was doing this. And I said, okay. And he said, immediately all of them responded back to me, because these were regional heads where all the employees that he commented on report up into. And I said, yeah. And what happened? He goes, well, they all responded back immediately. And I said, okay. And he's like, and they all loved it. All the employees were thrilled. In fact, one of them had a death in the family or some kind of a personal situation, so she was having an awful week. And so when the CEO came in, so Lorraine Siegel as a CEO comes in and comments on Sulemaan's post and says, this is great. You're doing a great job. You're representing us well. Keep going. The employee was actually in tears when she called her boss. So I said, well, that's great. Why am I an a-hole? And he goes, because now I have to do this. But he saw the value jokingly. And I think that that's the thing that I think becomes important, is leaders have to work harder to engage their employees who are under stress, who have difficult situations, and be a bit more understanding and lift them up. And I think that's a function of leadership. And you don't have to be a CEO to do it. You could do it with other colleagues. You could be a manager, an analyst. If there's someone on the call, you don't know what words of kindness or thoughtfulness will be or do. And, at the risk of embarrassing Lorraine, at one point I mentioned to her that, I might be coming out west. And she's like, well, you have to stay up the farm with me and your family. And Christy and other people have told me about that. Like, you don't know what a kind word or gesture will do to somebody at a key moment. We just don't know what's going on and what they're carrying. So that's one of the things that we try to emphasize to the leaders, because your employees will remember that when we get through this tough time.
There's no doubt. What a beautiful thing, and what a wonderful story, Sulemaan. That's really rings true from an ethics and morals point of view as well. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. We have a bunch more questions, and I want to try and bring a few of them up. Eileen from San Jose, do you advise on digital currency too? And if so, what's your advice on the use of the various kinds? So what do you think, Sulemaan?
So digital currency, full disclosure, I don't hold any. And the reason for that is I don't feel that I know enough about the topic to hold it. I also don't find it secure. And I mean, we teach it and stuff, but I just haven't found any solution that to me gives me comfort that if suddenly things crash or they're hacked, that there's, one of our advisory board members, Charles Tarek, taught me this, and he's been a mentor of mine for over 20 years, was never invest in something that you don't understand. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not saying I don't want to have people start pinging me saying, well, Bitcoin or whatever is legitimate. That's fine, or lithium, or any of the digital currencies. But for me, I would say do your due diligence. But I would say that with any kind of investment, doesn't matter if it's digital currency or anything else. Make sure you understand the product or the service that you are going to invest in before you do it. And the reason for that is I know people who've lost tens of thousands of dollars in these kind of investments due to hacking, fraud, not understanding the market or how they work, and it's caused strife within their families. So that's my position on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm in exactly the same place as you. We have one more question which I'm going to put up, and let's do a short answer because I have a little clip I want to share about the no-fly list, and I do want to get that into the program. So Anna, startup, what do we do to protect ourselves?
Well, the first thing I would say is the simple things like the two-factor authentication. Make sure that's set up for all your startups, social media accounts, but also for you as individuals on the team. And then the other thing I would say is look at an insurance solution like a Cyberbox or something else. Like they've got accounts that are coverage are like $500 or $1,000. To me, that's priceless for what you're being provided. And I think that's really important. So that's what I would suggest for that.
Oh, that's good advice. Thanks, Anna. I hope that was helpful for you. I want to talk about the no-fly list, but first let's put up a little clip which will introduce the topic.
This is a crazy story. The parents of a 6-year-old Canadian boy are angry because he's been put on the no-fly list.
He's the 6-year-old who was trying to fly with his dad to the NHL Winter Classic.
More than a dozen parents now say they believe the Canadian government has mistakenly flagged their children as travel threats.
I had no idea that tweet would generate the traffic it has in the media.
Adam, who's been deemed a high-profile traveler, may just be the one to influence Ottawa to make changes.
Lights will guide you home, and I will try to fix you.
When I saw that, Sulemaan, I just couldn't believe it. And it has to be at every government, every country in the world. So tell us how this came about and how you fixed it.
Well, thanks. That was so post 9/11, Canada created a no-fly list, obviously, to protect travelers, and that's fine. And the irony is, I worked in the airline business for 7 years, 4 years as air crew, and then 3 years in the e-commerce group of Air Canada. So what happened was, when our son Adam was born in 2009, he was on Canada's no-fly list, not because he'd done anything, but when Canada built their system, their no-fly list, they only built it on the basis of names. So no unique identifiers like date of birth, social security number, passport number, mother's maiden name. So if someone named Adam Ahmed somewhere else was convicted of terrorism or money laundering or human trafficking, or someone named Lorraine Siegel was involved with financial crimes, anyone with those names is now flagged on the list. And the problem for that is, imagine every time you have to travel, you have to come in 2 hours earlier to get cleared. And some of our families, people we knew, were getting prevented from flying, or worse, they were traveling overseas and then they were caught in really bad situations. So what happened was, per the video, on December 31st, 2015, I was taking my son to see a hockey game in Boston, and a client had invited us. And when the agent wasn't looking, I turned around, took a photo of her screen and tweeted it out. And as you could see, all hell broke loose. But what happened from that was that many families came forward, and it wasn't just people with like a Muslim or Arab name: French, Dutch, Italian, Jewish, Chinese, black, white, you name it, Irish. Everyone was impacted by this. So what we uncovered was over 100,000 Canadians were actually impacted by this, the majority, many of them children. So what took us 4 years of advocacy work, mainly using digital, so those elements you and I have talked about, like digital reputation and building out a network and making those deposits, allowed us, after 4 years of hard work, to get Canada to build a redress system similar to the one that the United States has had. But that took us a lot of work. We had to get support of 230 MPs in our parliament in writing to get their support. We then had to secure $81 million in the 2018 federal budget. And then we had to get a bill passed in the Senate to get legislative changes done. So thankfully, through the hard work of a lot of people, like my wife Khadija, Zamir Khan, Sarah Wilson, Heather Harder, Karen Ahmed, and many others who were involved, including lawyers, lobbyists, and advocates, the system went live, the redress system, in November of 2021. And so now that's fixed that problem. And the issue so someone must say, well, what's the inconvenience? Well, it's okay when your son's 2 years old and people can see he's not a security threat. But if he's still continually flagged as he's older, when he's 18, 19, 20, and let's say he travels overseas with his friends and he's suddenly flagged as a terrorism threat, that can become very serious. So our goal was to get the government to fix this. And it took a lot of work to a lot of people. And I've missed too many names that I can't think right now, but they know who they are.
Well, I thank you for that on behalf of society in general, because there are thousands of people out there, I'm sure, whose lives have been positively influenced by the work that you did in Canada for that. So that's amazing. Sulemaan, you are a gem. I am so grateful to you for sharing your insights with us today. I wish we had another 3 hours with you. I never get enough time with your insights. So thank you so much for being with us. I hope you'll come back, and lots of good fortune in the wonderful work that you do for everybody.
Thanks, Lorraine, and I appreciate the work that you, the Exceptional Women and Awardees organization, has done. And I've referred a lot of my clients to you, and I'll continue to do that. I think you guys do great work, and I think the advancement of women leaders is very important, and I fully support that. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we are so thrilled to have had thought leaders like Sulemaan, and we have another thought leader coming for you. But before, I want to ask you a question, and my email is up on the screen, so please do answer it. Have you had a cyber threat to either yourself individually or your business. And if you have, tell us about it. We'll see, maybe we can pass your issue on to Sulemaan and get you an email answer. So in addition to that, I want to tell you about our next show. It's going to feature a member of the EWA Advisory Board. Her name is Christina Sellier. She is a remarkable woman who is one of the only women in the video gaming industry. She is the CEO of Zordix AB and the founder and CEO of Maximum Games Group, which includes Maximum Games, which is a top 20 video game publisher, and Modus, which is its indie video game publishing label, and Modus Studios, a full development studio. Christina is a remarkable human being. I know that she will give you a lot of insights into the gaming world, which is not something that all of us know a lot about. Our kids and grandchildren know about it, but it is something that we should know about. And I hope that you'll join us on that show. Please go to our YouTube channel and Apple and Spotify. You'll see us there, both as a video and a podcast. And of course, we want you to write a fabulous review. And please be sure to join us on our upcoming show. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks for being with us.